I'd like to talk about a little bit about what you've been experimenting with in Web3 with the project. And you tell me, is it a project? Is it a community? F Web3? Like, what's your goal with this project? And like, what inspired you to start building in public with it?
Totally. Yeah. So, I've been, as you kind of talked about, like follow the Web3 stuff relatively closely in the last couple of years. And I invest in it. I have a lot of friends in it, etc. And I always find that, and frankly, I was getting a little bit of FOMO, especially as an investor, because even though, this stuff is going to take a long time, you kind of need to get in on the ground floor, right, generally, and wait a long period of time. And so I felt like I was kind of just thinking about, okay, like I'm a pretty decent sort of Web 2 investor. Why? Probably because I build stuff and because people in Web 2 might know me or what I've built because I've been doing it for a while. I have some sort of credibility, I have some experience, so people might want me on the cap table. All of these things don't apply to Web 3. I'm kind of, there are some things that do apply, but I think generally, people want Web 3 founders on their cap table. People want people who've been investing early in Web 3 projects on their cap table, etc. And so I felt like, okay, how do I do this? Well, there's unfortunately no shortcut. Like I have to do what I did with in Web 2, which is build stuff, for fun. Mostly with the goal of just learning and experimenting and trying out new stuff and being forced to figure it out. I had never deployed a smart contract, for example, right? I assume most venture capitalists have never deployed a smart contract. However, like to me, that's kind of insane, right? That's kind of like saying I'm going to invest in startups that I've never like shipped an app or built a website before.
Yeah.
Again, people do that, but I think it's sort of ill-advised. You would be a lot stronger if you kind of knew what you were doing. And so I was just like, okay, well, I'm busy, right? Like that's great, but like everyone wants to. It's not like you have to make the time. And honestly, what I noticed was February and Feb and Web have EB in common. And so basically, I was like, wait a second, like February Web3, and so I just came up with this name, and I felt okay. And sometimes you just need a stupid reason, right? Like the good reasons didn't work on me, so now I needed a stupid one to motivate me. And I just was like, okay, what I can do is I can spin up like basically I can just tweet out and sort of tell my audience like, hey, I'm going to spend February building in Web3. We're going to call it Web3. We're going to build some sort of game together as a sort of a forcing function to learn. And we have effectively 28 days to do it, right? The shortest month of the year. And that's what we did. We kind of built this game. I had really no clue like what it was going to do. I just kind of would tell people I'm building a game, and we would just kind of riff back and forth. And over time, like I saw what Wordle was up to, and I was like, oh, maybe we can build something like that, like a very simple game that feels hard but is actually pretty easy, which means it's kind of a very satisfying experience. It's kind of pretty social. It's pretty lightweight. And so that's kind of the approach that we ended up taking. And so over the course, yeah, honestly, like very surprised at what we did. Like
Yeah.
I had never ever done really anything in Web3, and within 28 days, we basically spun up a new token on Ethereum. We moved 10% or now 20% of that token to Polygon. Uh, we set up a faucet so that people can get that token for free, and then we set up a Matic faucet so people can turn that Web3 token into Matic, so they can effectively have gas to do all of this stuff on chain with. So it's effectively a totally 100% free game. And then people can complete 9 dots. That's kind of like the current version of the game where they connect their wallet, they get some tokens,
Yeah.
they send those tokens to somebody else, they burn some, they swap some for any token they want on Uniswap. And the last challenge of they mint an NFT, things like that. And then the last challenge of the game is they deploy their own smart contract to the blockchain. So every single person to win the game, sort of the final boss, is to deploy a smart contract. Um, and that, yeah, and then when you complete all those steps, you can get verified by a judge, and then get 1,000 commemorative tokens, and then also a trophy NFT. So there's 333 gold trophies. I believe they're all taken now. There's 3,000 silver ones, and then the rest will be sort of
Yeah.
whatever the number is, 6667 will be bronze or copper trophies.
I'm working my way through the game right now, and it's really interesting the the steps that are involved to complete, and then having the final boss being the deploying a smart contract, I think is an awesome move. It's getting more into the weeds from a technical standpoint is something that I've been personally trying on my own too. And sometimes it can be overwhelming just to start from scratch, but to have like, some of those walkthrough steps to guide you through, I think has been nice. And we'll
And
definitely have a link.
yeah, framing it as a game too, right? I think is really key.
Yeah, and we'll have the link to that for anyone listening in the description if you want to check it out yourself. Now I'm curious, why was the focus on education? And now it sounds like you might have just stumbled on into that, or was that intentional? Because a big talking point right now, everything crypto is we need education on why it's important, how you use it, from the ground up, we need education. So was that an intentional decision?
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like I feel like I'm a relatively competent person, and I've spent a lot of time like building software, and I still felt like I didn't have a good grasp of a lot of the mental models that you kind of need to make sense of crypto. And so, yeah, it was kind of just selfish, to be honest, right? Of like, what game would I have wanted? Like, ideally, I wouldn't have had to make this game. This game would have already existed. And there are some games like Rabbit Hole has some stuff, and Crypto Zombies, and things like that.
Yeah, I've checked out
It all
both.
felt like almost too playground like for me. It's like, no, I want to scare people. Like I want to make people feel uncomfortable. Like I don't want to just set up a sandbox and do stuff, right? Because the problem I find there is that you complete these tutorials, you think you know, and then you come up with some business idea, and then you realize like, oh crap, I have no idea how to actually build this thing, right? And so I think there was kind of two components that were really important. One was that we were actually going to build a real mainnet game that was going to cost some amount of gas to play, and I didn't even know in the beginning like how to solve for that. I just knew that it was important. And actually it was a community member, Brian Schuster, who came in and said, hey, just so you know, like all of these dots are going to take $20 a piece to complete if you keep this on ETH. uh, so like we should figure this out. And I was like, pitch me. I don't know,
Yeah.
I literally have no idea. So
I think
a day later he came.
the broader like crypto community is so focused on Ethereum, and I think that the messaging gets out like Ethereum blockchain rules all. But once you start really thinking about the scalability and how we get millions of people to interact and use, and you start thinking about the fees, I'm glad that you made that decision, because going to Polygon really does make it accessible for a lot more people.
Totally. I mean, ultimately, and this is something I always try to remind the people who I know who are either in crypto actively or have invested in crypto and sort of think it's the future, but don't really know why people hate on it so much. And the reason people hate on it so much is like really simple, which is it's freaking expensive. Like, guess what people hate on? They hate on expensive things because they can't buy them, they can't participate in them, and they feel excluded. And when those things go up in value, they feel even more hurt, because they didn't get to participate in that. They didn't even have the choice. And so it really, to me, just it doesn't. People talk about climate change and this and that. Literally, I guarantee you, none of that matters. That's all a red herring. It all will go away the minute you solve for price and accessibility. If you make it accessible, guess what? No one cares that the internet ruins the planet. No one cares that cars ruin the planet, right? Or maybe some people do, but generally it's not the time of the day. It's mostly the fact that people feel like excluded from it.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the truth, I think. But yeah, it was ETH is sort of $20 a transaction or $5 whatever it ends up being, but it's multiple dollars a transaction. And I think it is really important, whether that be through rollups, whether that be through side chains like Polygon, whether that be through just maybe a different approach, some people say, well, Ethereum is going to do proof of stake and that's it, and that's enough, right? Like there's a lot of sort of different opinions are being thrown around. I don't know what the answer is, but I do think at least, and this is the nice thing about building something is I can just tell people this is the decision we made, right? So I can speculate all we want, you can speculate all you want on zero knowledge versus validity stuff versus rollups versus optimistic rollups versus this and that. I can just tell you, look, like I had to make a quote unquote a business decision, and I chose Polygon, right?
Yeah. And I know from talking
So
to our CEO at Unstoppable Domains, Matthew Gould, like he's definitely of the mindset too that we make these decisions now and we continue evaluating, because
totally.
things are going to change again, and we're going to do whatever is best for the end consumer, and that might change even if it means changing infrastructure along the way.
You're listening to the Unstoppable Podcast.
the go-to place for everyone to learn about the latest innovations in Web3, NFTs, and the decentralized web. Welcome to the metaverse.